Hi everyone, I'm Scott. This is my channel CineRam. And if you're a fan of Jim Gisriel as I am, you're probably aware that he does live stream every now and again. On the live stream that he conducted last week, the subject of the A24 studio came up. A24 has a couple movies coming out that seem to be below their standards, as it were. They're known for very intelligent, award-winning, highly acclaimed films made by really talented writers and directors, and have great casts giving great performances. But they've got a movie with Dwayne Johnson that's going to be coming out, or it's about to be made, I suppose. And they've also are putting out the new Alex Garland movie. Alex Garland is the writer-director of Ex Machina and Annihilation. And he is now doing a movie called Civil War, which had a trailer release recently. And so some of the people, Jim, and some of the people in the chat were commenting on that, saying how it sort of mirrors what Miramax did. They were an award-winning studio in the 90s with lots of Best Picture nominations. And then they started putting out things like Reindeer Games and She's All That and what have you. Seemed to be below their standards. That seemed like A24 was going the way of Miramax in the early 2000s. My contribution to that particular conversation was the Freddie Prinze Jr. Julia Stiles comedy Down to You, which is on my top 10 list of one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life. And now, this list I don't include things like extremely low-budget horror movies or movies that are just like, you know, very, very seat-of-your-pants productions or, you know, minuscule budget things that really don't have the sort of talent and resources that a major studio has behind it. A studio that can afford that kind of polish that the smaller guys cannot. But yeah, nevertheless, sometimes you have good people making really bad stuff inadvertently or for who knows what reason. But Down to You is a comedy that is directed and written by a guy named Kris Issacson. And when I looked up his other credits, I basically just found, you know, a few TV movies and some episodic TV. Romancing the Bride and Husband for Hire. Yeah, I regrettably have not seen either of those. I'm not familiar with them. But Down to You was a movie that got a major theatrical release, which I'm kind of amazed by, because this is one of the most awkwardly written, awkwardly directed, awkwardly acted, awkward movies that I've ever seen. There is very little in this movie that is believable on a human level. There is very little in the way of conversations and dialogue that sounds actually natural and spontaneous. Things are just wrong. They're just off for whatever reason. It just does not work in any way. I never considered Freddie Prinze Jr. a particularly talented actor. I mean, he's likable, you know, and it's not like he's incompetent. I guess that he really, you know, perhaps just gives it his best. But Julia Stiles is someone who I feel is very talented, and she seems really defeated by this material. Don't know why she took this particular job. Maybe she was encouraged to by, you know, the people who are on her support staff or agent or what have you, to do a romantic comedy, which she was the lead. She has done some of those, but this one is just kind of a nightmare. You know, I mean, it's really hard to watch her performance in this movie and not think anything other than, boy, I just need to get through this because it's a paying job and it's high profile and it could be good for my career if it turns out hopefully okay, and it really did not. There's some really good people in this movie, actually, here and there. Henry Winkler is sort of a celebrity chef, a TV personality who is Freddie Prinze Jr.'s father. By the way, I should say this is a comedy set largely amongst college students. Shawn Hatosy, who's been in a bunch of movies as well as one of the lead roles in the TV series Animal Kingdom, and I think he's very, very good in that. He's you know, also defeated by the material a lot of the time. There's a scene in which he talks about an encounter that he has with a girl, and it seems like they redubbed his line in order to make it PG-13. It just comes off as very awkward and like he's just, you know, incredibly whiny for some reason. They just sort of like, I don't know. It's very strange. Also, Rosario Dawson and Selma Blair in this movie don't have much to do, I guess, although Selma Blair makes the most of her scenes, as she almost always does. But yeah, scene after scene of absolutely cringe situations, and it just don't just mean in the execution. It just makes you sit there and want to scream and throw something at the TV. At least in my case. I've collected a whole series of clips from the movie. There's a lot of clips from the movie available online on YouTube, and so if you look in the description below, you'll see them, and they're more or less in chronological order, you know, as they appear in the movie. So you maybe get a sense of the story. Basically, Freddie Prinze Jr. and Julia Stiles are a couple of college students, and they meet and they start dating. And there's a lot of narration, and there's even some direct-to-camera address as well. And it's just horribly, horribly unnatural and forced and hard to buy into even for a second. Most of this movie is just a really, really painful experience. And that's leaving out the character of Monk. Oh, I almost forgot. Ashton Kutcher is also in this movie, playing a guy called Jim Morrison. And someone comments that he actually looks like Jim Morrison, which he doesn't, because he's got shaggy brown hair. That's about it. But there's a character of Monk who's played by an actor named Zach Orth. I'm not really familiar with him other than the fact that he was in a couple other comedies around this time, in particular the Jason Biggs comedy Loser. But he really stands out as a character because he is not only a college student, he's also a porn star, and he is a philosopher. There's a scene in which he and another character are walking along a body of water, and he is making like supposedly profound pronouncements about life, and he tends to do this throughout the film, and it's just like, wow, what are you talking about? I mean, seriously, am I supposed to take any of this? Yeah, it's just awful. It's just absolutely awful. And there's a sex scene which is like the worst sex scene ever outside of The Room. In fact, it may actually be worse than the sex scene in The Room, because of the way that it's staged, the way that the scene performed. You'd have to see it to actually believe that. It's amazing that Miramax actually thought that this movie was releasable. That they looked at that and went, "Yeah, we could probably, make some money off of this." I mean, I don't know how many of the people in this movie, the cast members, nearly died from embarrassment when they finally watched the finished product, but I don't like to think about that. It's really awful. There's also a scene, again with Monk, the character of Monk, the philosophizing porn star, who encourages his buddy, Freddie Prinze Jr., to pick between one of two wine bottles, one of which represents truth, and the other one represents lies or illusion or deception or something negative, right? So he says, you pick one, and one will benefit you and one won't. So Freddie Prinze Jr. picks one of the bottles, and he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, that was the wrong one. You're doomed," or something like that. And just like, but, they're just bottles of wine. There's nothing to distinguish them in any way. It's just like, what is going on here? Why are these people acting this way? Did anyone object to anything that they had to say or sing or lip sync or dance? Because there's some of that in this movie as well, and it's horribly, horribly awkward. Yeah. It's not number one on my list of worst movies ever. That would be The Rookie, which is a Clint Eastwood action thriller with Raul Julia and Charlie Sheen. That one is a completely joyless experience from beginning to end. Not to mention badly shot and just like irritating, just like an irritating movie. But Down to You comes really close. It's in the top 10. It's real, 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 real bad. And since the subject of, older Miramax making that change over into more mainstream, more wide release stuff came up and how disappointing that was, I thought I'd share, my own personal experience with that particular phase of cinema history. If you aren't already subscribed to Jim Gisriel, Not Watching, the link to his channel is below. He does usually midweek live streams at this point. He also does reviews really regularly, and he's got Patreon and all that stuff. Very great guy. If you're not already watching him, but if you're watching me, you're probably already watching him because I don't have that many viewers. Thanks very much for watching. See you again. Bye bye.